Diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, is something you've all heard about before. It's the ultimate equalizer that has made it its mission to systematically ruin every single thing that you love and perceive as good in this world. It has ruined your favorite video games, bastardized your movies, indoctrinated your youth, and upended entire societies by replacing strong traditions once held to instead bow down to the monolith that vows to crush every bone in your body if you don't submit to it. DEI, wokeness, the name really doesn't matter. The actions of this harmful ideology has been evident and spreading fast across the vastness of our world. And I've spent a long time fighting against this because I know in my heart it was never an organic occurrence. In case you forgot, we learned through the US government that DEI, wokeness, and all the rest of it was exactly what I and many others have been saying, which is that none of this was natural. It was all systematically programmed from the beginning to uproot the nuclear family and destroy the very building blocks of society to make way for a new and worse way of living. And in case you also forgot, through this new administration, we also discovered that the vast majority of these practices were in fact being propagated and held up by actually the American citizens themselves, although they didn't actually know it. Their tax dollars were being used behind the scenes to fund all sorts of ridiculous initiatives across the world, while real Americans in their own country were left to suffer and were treated like disposable human beings or money pigs for their DEI overlords. As I said, 3 years ago now, we were even then slowly but surely heading towards a post-woke era. And this video will prove to you that we are indeed heading even faster to that reality. This then comes from Blaze Media. BlackRock drops DEI goals citing US policy shift. Yeah, you heard that right. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager in the world and one of the biggest funders of DEI across the globe, has officially stated that they're shifting their goals after the movement has been resoundingly rejected worldwide. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, who actually created the concept of DEI to begin with, had this to say in regards to BlackRock changing their goals as significant changes to the US legal and policy environment related to diversity, equity, and inclusion that apply to many companies, including BlackRock. The case in point is that DEI is no longer welcome within American society, and since American actions tend to shape the global world at large, it kind of just means that everyone is rejecting it now. Well, unless you live in the UK, then you're still cooked. Although despite BlackRock claiming they're moving on, it doesn't seem that way 100%, as it states here in their article. They're now changing their DEI policies to be called Talent and Culture, or TNC for short. They further state here, which reads, our employee networks, which are open to all employees and to which over 90% of employees belong, will continue to serve as important resources for our colleagues, the memo stated. Last year, we welcomed more than 3,000 new colleagues, and we are adding many more in 2025. Our connected and inclusive culture is imperative to achieving our commercial objectives and delivering performance for our clients. BlackRock stated later in the article that they have increased Black and Latino representation in their organization by over 30% since 2020, but since the new administration and the public's unwillingness to accept DEI or TNC or whatever they want to call it, they have since abandoned these goals. Which, if you ask me, that is a good thing. Some may say, but that means you're racist. Why is it bad that mega corporations are pushing for specific groups of people to be put into leadership positions? It's simple. Because they, along with gaming publishers and more, were not implementing people into positions of power that deserved or earned it. Think of it this way, right? Your car is cooked, you need it fixed, you likely don't care who works on the car as long as whoever they are, they get it done and they do it very well. In this case, DEI would choose someone to fix your car or work in your hospital when you need a surgery or teach your kids in school that didn't earn their right to be there in the first place. They are simply just there because they checked a box on a list when it comes to either their skin color, gender, or any other reason. I'm not and have never been against anyone being in positions of power so long as they earned it. What these companies have done is erase the struggle, so to speak, where humanity strives to become better and replace it with bouncy castles and escalators, so someone who hasn't had to try can reach the same heights due to things that have no bearing on their work. It's like as if you trained to become Super Saiyan and then someone else just took a pill and got the same results. You'd probably be pissed. Why even try anymore, you know? And this problem has persisted all over the entirety of entertainment, as I've explored to an exhausting degree on this channel already. But the fact that the backlash has gotten so nuclear that even BlackRock themselves have had to step back and go, maybe we need to reevaluate this, is kind of insane, guys. This hasn't stopped the Trump derangement syndrome, or TDS for short, spilling all over video games, unfortunately too. Since Trump won, a lot of your typical lefty game devs have been losing their minds of late, and that's putting it lightly. Grum spoke to certain people within Activision Blizzard about this, which, in case you don't know, that's where Grums used to work at. Anyway, according to him and his sources, Activision Blizzard is firing literally anybody who calls for political violence of any kind. Well, this now brings us to Alan Junge, a former quality assurance worker at Activision Blizzard who was fired from the company because he was pretty much, according to claims, advocating for other leftist game devs to arm themselves in the wake of what they call political violence. Are these people delusional? Yeah, absolutely. They genuinely think because Orange Man won the election that people in MAGA hats are going to storm Activision Blizzard and pull these people from their desks or their work from home stations and execute them in the street. ABK Workers Alliance stated here, today, Monday, February 10th, CWA Local 7250 filed unfair labor practice charges against Activision. The ULP is in regards to the unjust termination of Alan Junge, a QA tester and union leader who was unjustly terminated. I'll now read you part of this official letter that was sent via this worker agency on behalf of Alan Junge to Activision Blizzard to rehire him, and that what he has done was not political violence, but it's not looking good for him. But here's what they said, and I quote. On December 9th, Alan Junge, a union activist with the Communications Workers of America and Activision Quality Insurance in suburban Minneapolis, Minnesota, was unjustly terminated. Alan has been a core part of the wave of unionization across the video game industry. He helped lead a walkout at Activision in 2022 and was a key worker organizer that helped win union recognition for the Activision Quality Assurance Group in 2024 by a vote of 390 to 8, creating one of the biggest video game unions in the world. In October 2024, shortly before he was terminated, Alan was the spokesperson for the union at a public rally against the company's refusal to approve certain ADA job accommodations. He has been quoted in the media for his outspoken activism at Activision. The company is claiming that Alan violated policies for a November post on the company community Slack for employees. The post came in the wake of the US presidential election when several workers at Activision were loosely discussing arming themselves for protection. Alan responded by posting recommendations for safe and responsible firearms ownership and training, especially for those from LGBTQ communities and other marginalized identities. His threat did not threaten, encourage, or endorse violence or illegal conduct. Quite the opposite, he advised that workers should always seek de-escalation and escape first. But if they did own firearms, they should understand the dangers and risks and so get solid training on safe use. As Alan stated in an email to the company, when I decided to make this post, I wanted to be helpful for my coworkers and to do what I could do to prevent people from making rash decisions about their personal safety. I have learned that the only way to be safe around firearms is to be completely informed and vigilant in how they are handled. I also did not want to create the appearance that only lethal force is capable of self-defense, which is why I repeatedly emphasized the need to avoid conflict and obey all applicable laws, as well as gave advice on less lethal self-defense. Oh my god. To my dismay, I learned that the determination to terminate my employment included the verbatim language used to teach firearm safety in professional classes, as well as multiple out-of-context phrases and themes that were not discussed in the investigation. We believe that Alan's termination is not about safety, but about retaliation for his key role in standing up for co-workers and unionizing Activision. But the company has refused to engage in good faith discussions about this discipline and lied about specific details of Alan's termination. End quote. My god, that was a lot, but this entire thing, it just reads like an activist is mad that they aren't allowed to be an activist anymore and get paid for it, is what it sounds like to me. The fact this letter, which you can now see on screen here, says in the very beginning that Alan is actually unironically described as an activist first and a developer second is everything that you need to know that's wrong with how video game development and really all of this stupid DEI stuff is in the first place. Alan was clearly not in games to better them. He was only there to use it as a convenient scapegoat to push an agenda to enforce his beliefs. And I personally believe what Activision Blizzard did here was absolutely 100% in the right, in my opinion, to do. Because had someone like Alan been allowed to stay at Activision and continue advocating for things like this and pushing for what he says, arming the lefties and teaching them self-defense, this would only snowball in the future 100%. What exactly are these people arming themselves against? Every single time we see an attack on the public, it's some asylum seeker driving cars into crowded areas or some crazy person who demands that you affirm their pronouns that is pulling a gun on someone. These people are absolutely delusional to think that simply because Trump won the election that they are somehow going to be thrown in the gulag and turned into soap or something. Let me be straight with these activist morons. Trust me, nobody thinks of you guys as some important freedom fighters. You're not Che Guevara. You're about as scary as some guy who's wearing a cooking pot on his head while he's LARPing at a community fair. The fact it had to reach this point where these game companies have had to call for their employees who are fully grown functioning adults, well, to varying degrees at least, to not be complete R to the tarded when it comes to their political beliefs and how they push them, it tells you everything. Nobody is afraid of these activist developers. The majority of them would fall if you so much as push them slightly. Let's be real. These activists are actual morons, guys, and before someone says, oh, this isn't real, Grum's actually got a hold of a screen cap of these activists talking to each other. As one person said, it must be working on secret game title here that's making me more violent, but I've never been more tempted to buy a gun. Another says, arm the left. Another then says, after all, an armed minority is harder to oppress. If you can afford it, get life insurance. No one fights harder than insurance companies, and if more minorities get them, then it'll be harder for hate crime to get swept under the rug. You see what I mean? These people are genuinely delusional, dear viewers. How can you release some letter saying our devs are not advocating for violence when they're comfortable enough to be gaslighting and promoting to their own other fellow workers that, hey, I feel more violent these days. Maybe I should buy a gun. What do you guys think? These messages do not read like functioning normal adults. They read like activists who have been completely rotted out from the inside out by moronic DEI woke policies, and I'm not even trying to mince words here. These people need actual psychiatric help, but unfortunately, even therapists these days are usually just as unhinged or lost in the sauce as these devs are. So it just kind of becomes a gaslighting circle jerk session most of the time anyways. These sorts of people are not a threat physically to anyone really, but they are a threat mentally and ideologically to any sort of institution that employs them. Because this sort of behavior and rhetoric is running rampant through the industry, and even though Activision Blizzard is nowhere near the best company in the world, I will give them credit at least that they're terminating anyone who does things like this behind the scenes, on both sides by the way. We don't need conservatives nor liberal game devs to be advocating for stupid stuff like this at all in the industry. These people are there to make video games, well they should be, but frankly getting rid of these morons can only be a net positive to your bottom line in the future. Because it'll mean that you'll save money by not having to pay them, but also be removing their very clearly cancerous mentalities from your workforce so they don't poison the well, so to speak, in the future. Regardless, I bet this Alan guy is still in some Discord role-playing with other delusional devs on how he wants to put a gun in Trump's mouth or something else. And I think what all this DEI sloppiness has proven is that this entire movement and mentality is not just dated, but a genuine threat to the stability of normal life going forward. It is just as damaging and cancerous as any other radical movement or belief system, and of course, the very people who advocate for it will never not agree because they've been successfully brainwashed by it already. Like, just look here how ABK tweets about Alan. Why the hell would Activision employees need to arm themselves with guns at work? You really think that some gamer who thinks that Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is bad or something is going to raid Activision because you nerfed the AK-47 in game or something? Come on guys, this is delusional. These people genuinely think that they're freedom fighters or something when they're just activists who watch way too much Hassan Piker instead. If you're not there to make video games, just get out of the industry. Go work somewhere else because you're clearly not there to make games in the first place. All of this stupid performative activism needs to stop in not just games but everything. I couldn't watch the Oscars either, because you would just have all these out-of-touch millionaires who would get on stage and start saying how ordinary people are wrong and their politics are always right. And even in games, look at Halo recently. They got flack for their Women's Day armor sets. Why are these even in the game in the first place? First of all, they look ridiculous and awful. They even did an African armor set, yet you may be wondering, well, where's the white culture armor sets? Maybe a Serbian flag armor set. Denmark? What about an American flag one? Nah, those are problematic, so they won't be there, of course. But I wouldn't be surprised if Halo unironically added a Ukrainian armor set with a Zelensky custom banner for your profile, so you can really just own the chuds by showing everyone how much of a stupid sheep you really are, both in real life and in game. Frankly, these billions of dollars that are being lost pushing this sort of stuff has just kind of ruined everything. People like that Alan Judge or these stupid Halo skins, none of this would exist in video games had these bigger companies not pushed for DEI into literally everything. Diversity can be done well in a video game, but unfortunately when it comes to the Western way of doing these things, it can only be implemented in a ham-fisted and oftentimes completely ridiculous manner. Can they fix Halo? Can they make the story good? Can the new Call of Duty not be a slop fest that's full of online cheaters and bugs? Sorry, but the best they can do is just add trans flags for your profile, but don't you dare ask for anything conservative in your game where you shoot guns and work for the military-industrial complex, you bigot. And to the absolute shock of literally nobody, the layoffs that have hit the games industry have been affecting women the most, as this post from thegamer.com confirms here. 32% of layoffs were women only in the industry, a shocker to anyone who hasn't played a new video game in the past 10 years. What a coincidence that these mass layoffs come in the wake of every franchise and game you love being ruined in either significant or small but still equally annoying ways in the same time period, and we're supposed to feel bad about this. How exactly? Even GameIndustry.biz had their article where they stated 1/3 of all game developers were affected by layoffs, except we know that they're really saying is Western devs, not really the Asian ones. It's not surprising when you have people in Discord chats telling their game dev friends to arm themselves instead of focusing on making cool games, or getting let go at exponentially faster rates these days. And I can already hear someone saying, what will the West do when all the devs are gone that do this stuff? Will there be a labor shortage there or something? But here's the thing. The Asian side of the equation has been carrying the game industry on their backs for a while now. It's very obvious that the game industry at large can exist and operate without a strong Western presence within it. So what I think will happen in the East will keep getting stronger in the future. Their games will continue to dominate like Monster Hunter Wilds has, obviously, until eventually maybe the West doubles down and reorganizes itself into being a space where video games and fun come first instead of activism. It's not like they're getting much funding anyway. Well, some of that is coming back, unfortunately, though. I reported a while back on how the whole US aid thing was paid by American taxpayer dollars, which was responsible for paying the bills for a lot of these companies' websites and so on that pushed all the slop. That all got frozen by Trump's administration. He actually recently even said publicly that woke is no longer allowed in America. Here's that clip, by the way. Please watch this.
We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military. Our country will be woke no longer.
And it's glorious and beautiful, and that close-up on Ilhan Omar's face, or however you say her name, who, by the way, married her own brother. Just, mwah, chef kiss. You couldn't have made it funnier if you tried. However, some of that USAID money has still made it through. Two justices, one being Amy Coney Barrett, has overruled in a 5-4 ruling to allow some form of foreign aid to be given by the United States despite USAID getting mostly scrapped. The amount of money that has exactly been given hasn't been said yet, but once we know, I'll let you guys know, of course. But it's clear that the way things are going, this whole stupid activism nonsense is dying a right and just death. These sorts of mentalities cannot be allowed to fester because wherever in the world such activism is allowed to flourish, it is only resulting in boatloads of crime, destruction of the foundations of society, and in terms of entertainment, they didn't just try to turn the frogs gay, they wanted everything to be gay pretty much. Finally, we have this from Time. Retreating from DEI initiatives could cost businesses billions.
You serious?
The entire article tries to say that not investing in DEI will only ruin the economy, and they stated one point which reads, "This is not a niche market, it's the auto industry's future majority consumer and it's growing fast. Take for example one segment of that market, the LGBTQ+ community. The number of US adults who identify as LGBTQ+ has doubled over the past 12 years to at least 20 million American adults. This community represents $1.4 trillion in buying power, a figure that's set to surge as Gen Z, which identifies as 24%, And even millennials, which is at 15% as well, and blah blah blah. Ask yourself why in the past few years the number of LGBTQ plus people has suddenly doubled, and why 24% of Gen Zers identify in that group specifically. Think about that for a second. You're telling me that the same time frame when propaganda is pushed to sway people in a certain direction also just coincides with the rise of a specific group of people both lifestyle and mentality wise, and that's just not weird to you. Look, I'm not saying that nobody is gay, but 24% of Gen Zers? And coincidentally, all of this explosion in these demos happens once political activism, USAID and more, has ran through entertainment like a bullet train, and we're just supposed to accept that as being a mere coincidence. You ask me, with the way things are going, we're probably going to see a resurgence of this stuff in the future. And unfortunately, I do think people are stupid enough to fall for these sorts of things again and again as time goes on. Because if the last 5 years have taught me anything, is that humanity is very impressionable and oftentimes full of literal morons of all walks of life that will believe anything that they're told. And while woke may be on the back burner for now, BlackRock is walking back its efforts but is still rebranding it so it's not gone completely. And all these devs who are women or just identify as one, I guess, which just confuses things further, are crying about layoffs. It's important to remember that if they had their way with the world, these things would instead become the norm. And the world and your entertainment will just become a bludgeoning tool for these types to ruin everything you love to push their agendas. And it's very important that we stand up against them and these things. But what do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.